Well, guys, there's so much to discuss today. I did chuck the rundown last night as I saw real pained tweets going across my feed about the Eric Garner story. I mean, for those watching this on YouTube, Eric was the man who was allegedly selling illegal untaxed cigarettes in New York Staten Island borough when he was accosted by two police officers, one of whom applied an illegal, by New York cop standards, chokehold. And his companion filmed the incident all last summer, and it was a YouTube sensation. And those of you that are watching this on our Worldview show feed will see the actual tape running behind us. And Eric clearly says, as he's being held in this chokehold, "I can't breathe." He says it 11 times on the tape before he then dies on tape. Now, this video led to the release a few weeks ago of a coroner's report that stated that the cause of Mr. Garner's death was asphyxiation from that chokehold. And yesterday, we're taping this on Thursday morning, yesterday at about 2 p.m. Wednesday, Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. GMT, the New York grand jury came back with a decision not to indict the police officer who killed this man. And this led to thousands marching peacefully in the streets of New York, chanting both the Mike Brown Ferguson "Hands Up, Don't Shoot," and now, of course, "I Can't Breathe." So for the heavy start, I was very sorry for that, but this was deeply disturbing last night. My Twitter feed was ablaze. The guy who takes the video, the other one who actually films it, was indicted in July by the grand jury. Yet the cop who killed Eric Garner is not. What the is going on?
Appalling. That tape is so disturbing, isn't it? I mean, you actually see him die on tape. I mean, it's appalling, really.
From an illegal chokehold. I mean, the police fought it against having these made illegal. The mayor fought against making these illegal, and pretty much every major city has said, don't take away our ability to restrain somebody. Well, this restrain or kill.
So how, just give me a flavour of the extent of the rioting in America over this.
Well, the interesting thing is that it's not been rioting thus far, and I'll touch wood on that because, at the moment it was peaceful protests. They were stopping traffic, they were walking through intersections, and the latest trend now in protests against Ferguson and all last week is to stage these so-called die-ins, literally where people are dropping to the pavement as if dead for 4.5 minutes to represent the 4.5 hours that Mr. Brown's body laid in the street untouched by any officials. Dario, what have you got of this?
Well, I mean, I'd be really interested to understand what the rationale is for not indicting. I mean, the tape is, completely grisly viewing. As you say, the victim's repeatedly saying, "I can't breathe." And it's all just in plain view. I can't really understand why they wouldn't even put this indict it so it goes through to a trial, so some kind of investigation can be made. To not even let it get to that point is incredible. And according to a statement from Staten Island District Attorney Daniel Donovan, New York law prohibits his office from disclosing the records of the grand jury's proceedings. However, Donovan's written that he's applied for authorization to publish this information just so that people can see, what the reasoning behind that decision was, because I think it's really important.
The interesting thing about all this is if you look at what it takes, in a grand jury proceeding. I mean, the grand juries are called for the purpose of helping the prosecutor bring forward cases. No, that's their whole purpose for existence. They're not there to sit and try the case. They're not there to sit and hear voluminous amounts of evidence. They're there to basically rubber stamp a prosecution for the state's attorney, in this case the district attorney. So if the district attorney, let's just assume that this was a open and shut by normal standards case of robbery and assault, and they're going to the grand jury and they're saying, "We believe that on this particular date this man robbed this person and beat them up, and we'd like you to bring forth an indictment so that this can go to trial." That's the proper way a grand jury operates. But what we've seen in Ferguson is a complete trial, not presenting evidence that says, we believe that there might be enough evidence here for us to indict Officer Wilson and move forward, or in the case of New York, there is enough circumstantial evidence based on what we've seen to indict this police officer for the chokehold on Eric Garner. Instead, they seem to be wanting to confuse the jury into a point of actually doing a full trial when their full purpose is to do nothing but have these indictments come
I
down.
thought as well, I mean, given that it's so soon after the sensitivity of Ferguson, that they would be very sensitized to this. Looking at it from the point of view of an ordinary person outside the US, there are huge political sensitivities involved here, and why aren't they alive to that? Quite apart from the issue that Dario raised of the evidence being there before your eyes on the tape in the second incident, there should be an indictment. I don't know what. Well, I know a lot of lawyers, and maybe there are legal issues there that they can't pursue. I don't know what it is. It would appear to be all there on the tape, but apart from anything else, you would have thought the sensitivities of the issue made this very, very real.
Yeah, it's becoming morbidly ironic, really, that the overt level of structural racism that seems to be in the judicial system in the United States. And the irony is that a black man holds the highest office in the United States, and in many ways is still the most powerful man in the world. Yet if you're an ordinary black guy in America, you must feel like that you're no longer part of the social contract, that your country no longer protects your rights. It's almost like the civil rights movement is being lost to the annals of history somewhat.
Yeah, and one of the things that came out, as many in the audience know, every day here begins with the iPad and the playing of the past evening's Rachel Maddow broadcast, and she interviewed an activist who also happened to be a lawyer, and one of the things that this woman said, and I wish I could remember her name, I'll probably put it in the show notes, was that the whole issue and this idea of burden of proof when it comes to police officers and prosecutors gets extraordinarily muddy because they have to work together on so many other cases. So what she was saying in the course of the interview was that in some respects there is a high level of fear amongst those in the office of these prosecutors, whether it's Ferguson or New York, that if they go after a cop, that it becomes an issue of them not then being able to cooperate further down the road with larger cases.
Well, that's interesting to say that. I can't. I don't have any sort of input in relation to the legal system in America, but certainly in Britain, I've been in a number of legal cases where, until quite recently, the jury and the judge would side with the police. And there's no question about that. That happened. You would get an issue where the police officer would give an uncorroborated piece of evidence, and that would be accepted by the judge and jury completely. And yet, it emerged in the last sort of 15 years that there has been huge corruption within the police. In effect, they were jailing people who were innocent.
Yeah, and there's what bothers me is that, and I know a lot of good, conscientious cops.
Yeah.
On both sides of the pond. Yeah. People that take their profession seriously, that take their job seriously.
Yeah.
And they're all saying that these cameras will help, but let's face it, nothing can stop a bad cop from doing bad. And what happens is that a good cop also gets tainted as a result of what happens here. It's really clear that what's going to happen now, because you saw it last night very late, Eric Holder, the Attorney General of the United States, was very quick to say that they are now investigating. The governor of the state of New York is investigating. So, as has happened in many cases in New York City, this isn't over. Even though the local grand jury failed to indict, what's happened in case after case of clear stories like this, and could indeed happen with Ferguson, but that's another kettle of fish completely, is that there may be a federal civil rights indictment brought as a result of that. And those tend to have a bit more success. It's almost as if you expect at some level the local prosecutors to side with the local cops, and then it has to become a federal issue down the line. But the question is why.
I'm interested to hear you say, Dario, talk about that, use that phrase, institutionalized racism. I mean, do you think that exists here as well in Britain to that extent?
Well, I mean, it's a difficult question to answer. I mean, if you look at the sort of history of the police force in Great Britain, there's been, many instances of, racist incidents where people have been accused of treating those of ethnic minorities as different as they would. I mean, stop and search is a key example. The Home Office itself had to kind of clamp down on the overt zealousness of which black people were being stopped and searched in their vehicles. So that in itself, I mean, it doesn't seem like it's a big deal in the same way as a guy dying, but harassed all the time, then it's a real problem in the sort of cultural understanding of where you're positioned within society in relation to these organizations that are supposed to be protecting us.
Yeah, it's it's interesting that you say the stop and frisk. Stop and frisk in New York City has also been stopped by the new mayor de Blasio, much to the chagrin of Bill Bratton, who is the police commissioner in New York City, and yet crime did not increase with the cessation of stop and frisk. So there's something to be said. It reminded me there was an old piece by Richard Pryor where he was on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. So this is way back in the 1980s, in which he said, yes, and when I leave the show tonight, I will be driving through Beverly Hills. And Carson looked at him and said, why are you saying that? He said, I just want the police to know where I'm going from place to place to place. Because driving while black was an issue even back then.
Because do you remember that sketch on Not 9 O'Clock News in Britain where there was a policeman who was being interviewed by his senior about his arrest record, and he's arresting people with thick lips and who were called Abu Dhawabi or something, and the whole sketch was about institutional racism, and it was very funny. And it speaks to me actually of how you actually can get at the truth through humour.
Oh, absolutely.
There's a combination with notions of power though as well, because on a kind of another story which is only related tangentially, you've got the whole thing that's happened with Bill Cosby. So here is a black man who has infinite amount of power and has a particular cultural status in society that has protected him over the years, allegedly from these things that have been alleged against him. So it's not just a simple matter of race on its own. It's a combination of race and where somebody's status is in society. So, for example, President Obama, Harvard educated, represents a different kind of class position than, say, the average black man on the street would, and therefore the laws will apply to those people in different ways.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that there are the good blacks and the bad blacks, and it's like you sit there and you think, wait a minute, no, we're all the same, and people should be treated the same under the law, but it's very clear that they're not.